screen?
Affirmative.
All right, so I just wanted to highlight that we adhere to the code of conduct as set forth in the ngconf website. So I pasted a link a little bit ago. I'll paste it again every, like, I don't know, 30 minutes or so in case more people join. Just let's make it a fun, awesome event like we always do, and try to avoid any language or video that would make anyone feel uncomfortable. So we're pretty good at that, to be honest. We haven't had any issues since I've ran things, but that doesn't mean they can't happen. So if it does happen, then we can address it when it happens. But go ahead and you should share, Michael.
Okay. I can't share the screen while another participant is sharing.
Oh, my bad. Let me fix that for you. If I can find my others. Let me see, is Mark here?
Okay, so I'll share my screen now. Screen 3. There it is. Trying to, every time you change what you're doing in Zoom, it like gets rid of all of the things you had open. I want to see the chat and the participants, but closes it every time you do something different.
Oh, I know Zoom can be so difficult, but it's what we got sponsored, so that's what we use. I haven't seen Mark Thompson pop in yet, so if I have missed you, please let us know on chat, and I will promote you to panelists. Typically, we promote everybody to panelists, and so I will start doing that as we go along. Of course, if that's okay with you, Deborah, during your talk, to have people show their screens and be able to talk to you real time. Cool. But yes, we will be talking. So Brooke Cheney asked in the chat if we have any new job opportunities in Lehigh area. We will actually have a 5-minute portion where anyone can get on for 30 seconds and say, hey, I want a job. This is who I am. This is what I do. And then same thing, same 5-minute period for job, for hiring managers or whoever's here for positions to talk for 30 seconds on positions they have available for Angular developers. This is part of a program we're trying to reinstate where people can find jobs and not only be trained, but also find new employment in a difficult time. So. Oh, there's Mark. I'm going to promote him.
So, should we kick off with our sponsors and get this thing going?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, everyone, welcome to the Angular Utah Meetup. I want to say thanks to our sponsors, Kingster.io, ngconf, Hero Devs, and Proven Recruiting. This is not only better because of you guys, but also possible because of you guys. So thanks for that. Usually, Thinkster, Hero Devs, and ngconf are sponsors basically every time. This meetup, Proven Recruiting has decided to sponsor us, so we're going to give them a minute to talk about what they do and what they offer. So, did we promote?
That said, we need to promote.
Yeah. Let me see. I saw them in the list there.
Promote Chelsea to a panelist. And is Kelly here? I'll promote Chelsea and she can tell us if she or Kelly is going to talk.
Well, there's a proven recruiting one there as well.
Hi, Kelly and I are both on.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you want to let her be a panelist too, I'm sure she'd love to jump in and say hi too.
For sure.
It's so strange, like not being able to see everyone's faces because that's what I'm used to. It's like
I actually, speaking of that, I just have so much going on that I didn't say it. But if you guys would be okay with showing your camera and talking live to everyone, I already got pre-approval from Deborah and Mark. They're cool with it. Everybody can be made presenters, panelists. So you can show your cameras, you can talk. Of course, again, code of conduct. We will follow that thing to the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, everything. So, you know, please be cool. And just put in the chat, I would like to be a panelist. And then you'll be able to show your mic, or show your camera and do your mic. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Chelsea, and Proven Recruiting. Tell us all about yourselves.
oh, awesome. Kelly, are you on mute? You're still on mute. If you wanna.
Okay.
There you go.
So yeah, Chelsea and I were really excited to get partnered up with this group. We actually have supported the San Diego chapter. If anyone knows Michaela Dewitt, just really value and appreciate the relationship we've built with her and in the San Diego marketplace. And so we saw Eric promoting this meetup and thought, you know, with location being a no-brainer at this point, let's talk to the Utah people. And I saw some Costa Rica people log in. I think I noticed somewhere else from out of the country. So it's cool to really put boundaries and locations aside and get to chat with everyone. So like our slide says, we're at Proven Recruiting. We've been around for a long time. Chelsea and I are on the technology, IT, engineering side of the house. We do work with clients that need Angular all the time, and just excited to be partnered up and put some pieces together. So I'll pass it to Chelsea so she can tell you just one or two highlights of a couple positions we're working, if that's a good thing to hear. And like Eric said, if people are mentioning they're looking for a job, we'll be sure to jot your name down or connect with you however best works for everyone and see how we can help. So thanks for having us, Eric.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for sponsoring one of our prizes today. Mike's going to tell us a little bit more about that in a bit.
Awesome.
Actually, could you send me, or did I miss it? Did you already? Oh yeah, there we go. That's a beaut.
And there's going to be a gift card that goes with it. We want to be considerate of the locations. I think everyone has Starbucks, but if not, we can do Grubhub or something a little bit more neutral, but you will get this tumbler as well.
Super cool. Thank you. You guys can continue to be panelists if everyone can. I'm adding people right now, so just let me know.
I know that you said, Eric, that you're doing like a separate time to talk about jobs and stuff. Can we still mention just a few quick jobs now? Or do you want to?
Yeah. Go ahead and mention them now, and then we'll let that lead us into jobs in general.
Yeah, so we definitely, like Kelly said, we're working with a lot of different companies, and a lot of companies are location agnostic now. One, we have a very senior Angular opening, front-end opening with like a data visualization SaaS platform. We have mid-level, we have senior, we have a junior, kind of full stack, more full stack like Angular.net openings. The more junior one is with an kind of like energy services company. And then there's a kind of mid-level and then a senior role with a mortgage software company as well that are based here. Both those companies are based here in San Diego. So
cool. So with that, we want to open it up. Is there anyone here that is hiring or looking for work right now?
Go ahead and throw your name into the chat. That way we can get an order on everyone, so we're not competing for the same time space. Just throw something in the chat, and then we'll give you your 30 seconds, and then we'll go. We're only going to do this for 5 minutes, and then we're going to move on to the awesome trainings we're going to have today. So we got Brooklyn Cheney in the chat. I recommend and that's totally cool. You can also just throw it in the chat, but I'm going to promote you to panelist. Actually, oh, we have a bunch of people. Oh, sweet. Good job, Joe. Do we want to have new people talk who aren't looking? So if you're looking for a position, let's connect you to the people who are hiring rather than have you get on and talk about yourself. I think that makes more sense, doesn't it, Michael?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
And make sure, I mean, Proven Recruiting, they just said they have positions open up basically at any level. So if you're looking, they're a good people to reach out to. And this is cool. Some people saying they've seen positions open, like Disney Parks is looking for a senior UI developer. So that's cool.
And we got Brooklyn. She's looking for a new job. So.
Yep, and Proven Recruiting just put a email address in there, so Brooklyn could jump on that.
Okay, we got another hiring group, STG. Christina, would you like a chance to speak? Awesome. Christina Larson.
Brooklyn, it's a message like, what, 6 or 7 messages above the message you just sent. cderose@provenrecruiting.com. Oh, and there it is again.
So go ahead, and Christina, and you can tell us a little bit about the opportunities you got for 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, I'm with STG, Software Technology Group, and we've been in the Valley here for about 25 years here in the Salt Lake City Valley. And we have some current openings right now that they're primarily Java and Angular, but we're always looking for Angular talent, and we help companies with their different software needs. We typically hire on our team on a salary basis with a full benefits package, and our consultants get to go out and do project work, but there's no break in their pay, no break in their benefits, even when they're in between projects. So I'll go ahead and include my email in the chat.
Awesome. I used to work for STG. I love STG. You guys are great. They gave me a job when I was needing one. It was a fun one too. So I did some contracting work through that. And you know, all over the country, this meetup has turned into an online thing. And so, all right, I think we might be out of time. So let's go ahead and move forward.
Okay, so next at our meetup, we have a quiz at the end of the meetup, and I forget who provides it, but it's one of those where try to answer the questions quickly and accurately, and it'll score you, and then the winners are going to win some prizes. One of them is going to be that Proven Recruiting Cup with the gift card. And another one is going to be 1 month Thinkster Pro membership. So listen to the talks and be ready for that quiz at the end for a chance to win one of those prizes. And we do prizes like this at all of our meetups. So keep coming, and you can keep winning other stuff. So that's exciting.
I'll be building those quizzes on the fly, so I don't try to put that burden on our speakers. So it's a burden on me to listen to what you got to say and hopefully come up with deceitful answers to the questions so that so it's not too easy. So.
Okay, so with that, we are going to get to our speakers. First, we're going to have Deborah, and she's going to talk to us about RxJS. Deborah is a software developer, consultant, conference speaker, and Pluralsight author focusing on Angular and C#. For her work in support of software developers, she has been recognized with the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Award, or MVP, and the Google Development Expert, or GDE. And so she knows what she's talking about, and she's talked a lot. And so let's give her some time and take it away. I'll stop presenting and you can start. There you go.
All right, are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. And yes, as you said, it just completely changed the view that I was looking at. So I wanted to be able to see where to go, the discussion. Well, I don't know where that option went, it disappeared. Anyway, so I was hoping to be able to look at the questions. There it is, I found it, chat. I had it all set up correctly, and then when I showed my screen, everything changed, just like what you ran into, Michael. All right, so I think I'm ready. We're going to be talking about Angular RxJS patterns. So as he mentioned, my name is Deborah Kurata, and he already went through all of that, so I'll just skip that. And we're going to be talking about 4 key RxJS patterns: the declarative data access pattern, the retrieve on action pattern, shape on action pattern, and retrieve related data pattern. So those are the 4 we're going to concentrate on today. But we're going to start with some terms first to make sure that we are all on the same page regarding our RxJS/Angular terminology. So the first term, of course, with RxJS is observable. And what is an observable? It's basically a collection of items over time. But unlike an array, because array is also, of course, a different kind of collection, unlike an array, it doesn't retain those items. The emitted items can be observed over time. So say, for example, you're tracking key presses. You could put those into an array. So you have an A, P, P, and so on. If that was an observable, it would instead be like that, and that, and that. They're just kind of occurring over time. So if you said, okay, what's the third one? It would be, I don't know, I just gave you a bunch of them. I don't know what the third one was. So that's something really important to keep in mind as you're working with observables. You could kind of think of an observable like a drive-up window. The person at the window emits food items over time. And if you went back around and asked the person at the window, hey, what was in the bag of stuff you just gave me? They would go, I don't know, I just gave you the bag, and it's up to you to deal with whatever's in there. Once I gave it to you, I have no recollection, and you're gone. So you can kind of think of an observable like that. Why would you want to use an observable? Well, it's really great for things that arrive over time, like key presses, mouse movements, button clicks, and of course, our HTTP responses. Because as you recall, when you access HTTP, you issue a request with our HTTP GET, put, post, whatever. So you issue that request. It first has to find its way to the endpoint, and then once it's found its way off to that endpoint, then it executes some code. Maybe it calls the stored procedure on SQL Server, and it has to collect the data, and so it's all taking some amount of time. At some later point in time, that response is actually returned to you, and so it's a really good use of observables. You can also use it for notifications, process complete, process failure, and so on. Using an observable helps us very easily react to arrivals or emissions and those notifications. The other cool thing about observables, though, is they also work with synchronous data. So you can treat an array as an observable. You can treat any set of data as an observable. So it doesn't necessarily have to arrive on time, but that's really what it's good at. What does an observable do? Nothing. An observable does nothing until a consumer subscribes. When subscribed, the observable begins emitting items or notifications to the consumer, and it only does 3. There's only 3 of them that it does. Next, when the next item is emitted and as part of that payload, then it gives you that next item. Error, when an error occurs, and once an error occurs, no more items are going to be emitted, and then complete, no more items are emitted. Going back to our metaphor, next is like the next car drives up and the person at the window hands them the next bag of food. An error, you can think of the cash register going down and they can't do any more transactions, so no more items are going to be emitted. And complete, it's the end of the day and they are shutting down and not taking any more orders. And those are the 3 notifications that you work with observables. All right, so along the way throughout this talk, you'll notice that I'm going to throw in some tips. And here's my first tip. Marble diagrams aid in visualizing an observable. Now, I take a very overly simplified view of marble diagrams. So if you've seen a real one, you know that this is quite simplified, but I think it does a good job of making the point. So in this case, the observable is the line with the arrow on it. The emission is that marble, that purple dot on there, and the straight vertical line is the complete. So it's kind of like left and right, horizontal, vertical. I always have to think through that one. All right, I have one and done there listed on the left because when you work with HTTP, your observable is one and done. It returns you the response from that HTTP request, and then it's done. That's it. You get that complete, and that's the end of it. But you also might have a more infinite observables. For example, that keyboard input, where it's just going to keep tracking what you're typing until your application stops or whatever. Okay. One of the nice things about Angular is that it creates these observables for us. Routing emits parameters via a param map observable. Form control emits a value via a value changes observable. And the one we've been talking about, HTTP client, emits the response via an observable. So here's some code. We've probably seen this kind of code a gazillion times. This is in the Angular documentation and pretty much all the sample apps. We have some kind of method like get products. It returns an observable that's going to emit an array of products. That's what that generic syntax is. And then it returns the response from the HTTP get. The generic parameter there is specifying that when it receives that response back from the backend server, that it should map it to an array of items matching your product interface. So that's what that generic parameter is telling you. Okay, so in the component then, we go ahead and call that method. So question, what does this code do? Anybody want to type in an answer real quick? What does this code do? See if you can tell me in 3 words or less. There you go. Moody, you got it. It does absolutely nothing. Good job. So why does it do nothing? Because an observable does not do anything. Yeah, tricky question. Until a consumer subscribes. So that takes us to our next term, subscription. Like the ever-increasing number of streaming services, you have to have a subscription for it to emit anything for you. So if you want to watch that new Star Trek series, you have to get CBS All Access. If you want to watch Mandalorian, you've got to get Disney Plus. You've got to have that subscription before you can start downloading those or viewing those programs. And in RxJS land, it's similar. You have to subscribe before it's going to start giving you something. Technically speaking, a subscription is an object that represents the execution of an observable. So we add .subscribe on there. The subscribe returns that object, that subscription object, and we can sign it into a variable. Here's another tip. You're smart already. Ensure each observable is subscribed and ensure each subscription is unsubscribed. So here is our component in a more complete sense. So we've got the whole on init, on destroy, our ng on init is calling our subscribe. So there's our subscribe, it's putting it into a variable so that we can then on the destroy unsubscribe. And that ensures that we don't have any memory leaks. Okay, so that's all fine and good. We're calling our method. We're getting back a subscription. Where's our data? How do we work with that emitted value? Where is our array of products? That's where that third term, our third and last term comes in. An observer watches for emissions and notifications. What notifications? Do you remember what they are? Next, error, complete. Okay, so our observer is going to watch for those 3 notifications. Now you can define an explicit observer, though this is uncommon. I just like to kind of show this because it makes it more clear what an observer is, though we don't normally write code like this. But an observer is an object with 3 methods. A next method defined with an arrow function. It receives that emission, which in this case is an apple, and it performs an operation, which is logging. The error receives the actual error. Again, the action is logging. The complete doesn't give you any payload, but it does allow for an action. So if that's not really how we do it, how do we do it? Oh, wait, forgot this line. You need to then pass that observer in to the subscribe in order for it to actually react to those. But as I said, this is uncommon. What do we do instead? We do our observer with an arrow function. So here's our subscribe, and directly in our subscribe is where we have our next function. So we receive our next item, which is an apple, and we log it. A couple of years ago, RxJS was changed such that subscribe will only take 1 argument. So it can either be that next function, or it can be an object with our observer. So our next error and complete. Now you don't have to have all 3 of them. Most Angular applications you'll only see next and error frequently. You won't see the complete because there's nothing special that needs to be done on complete for that particular case. Okay, so looking at our set of code then, our source $ is an observable. We have a $ on the end of that to identify that as an observable so that we can tell that it's not an array or some other kind of data structure. The subscription is what we get when we call subscribe. Then we can use it to unsubscribe, and then we're passing in our observer with our next error and complete. All right, so those were our terms: observable, subscription, observer. Everyone's good? All right, there's one more thing that I want to cover before we jump into our patterns, and that is pipes. So when you work with RxJS, you can specify a pipe which transforms each emitted item. For example, say we emitted an A, we could pipe it through a lowercase operator and it becomes a lowercase a. We can pipe that same A through an enlarge operator, and then we have a bigger lowercase a. So that is kind of how piping works. It takes in the emitted value, it performs some operation on it, and then it emits next to the next operator in the pipeline. Okay, so you can kind of think of this as a pipeline that's going to perform operations on your emitted items. Some common pipeable RxJS operators include tap, which taps into the stream without changing it. That's really great for debugging. I highly recommend, if you're having problems with RxJS, to start putting a bunch of taps in so you can see what's happening at each step. Map is a basic transformation. Catch error catches errors, and there's about 100 more that we're not going to all cover in this little time frame here, because I want to focus on these patterns that we're going to get to here in just a second. All right, so what does a pipe look like in our code? So we start the stream with a subscribe, then we pipe through a set of operators. So there's our tap, so we're just logging out what we are getting from our source, and then we're mapping. We're calling add to juicer to manipulate that apple into juice. and then we're subscribing. Then we're using the map to process each of the items. Notice that there's no need for an observer because we can process the items instead through these pipeable operators. You can still have an observer there if you also want to do something else, but you don't have to have one. And then, of course, we stop the stream when we're done with an unsubscribe. All right, so that's piping. Are we good? Okay, so now we're to patterns. Are we ready? All right, so I, like many of you probably, try to really support the community. So I try to participate on Stack Overflow such that I can. I try to help people on Twitter. There are discussion groups associated with my Pluralsight courses that I try to help people on. And one of the questions that I get frequently is, I don't even know where to start with this RxJS stuff. How do you even think about it? And I kind of realized that it actually, all of RxJS kind of works with this basic idea of three things. What do you have? What do you want? When do you want it? So if you think of all of your RxJS, what you need to do to make your RxJS pipelines work, answering these three questions, as simple and absurdly obviously short that they are, they actually do help you think through your RxJS. So let's actually try these with our 4 patterns. So here's my sample application. I've got a list of products on the left. So there's each of the products. And this is my design. And what I need to do as a developer is I need to get my RxJS to produce this list so I can display it on my page. So how do I do that? What do I have? Well, starting up the app, I don't have anything. I have nothing. What do we want? We want the list of products. When do we want it? We want it on the initialization of the component. So here's our classic pattern for retrieving data, the code in our service. And we've already looked at code very similar to this. This one just has the piping tap to display some data to make sure that our HTTP GET worked and a catch error. And then in our component, we've already seen this code as well. The only part that's different is we are now taking the products we've received from that service and putting them into a component level property, our products property that we can then bind to. So this all looks familiar, yeah? But notice that our service was procedural, meaning that we're using a get products method in order to retrieve our data. What if we instead made it declarative? So instead of a subroutine that we're going to call, let's just declare a variable. So it's products dollar. Again, the dollar is because this variable now represents an observable. The rest of the code is basically everything from that return statement. So we're just now have a variable for our observable. Okay, our component then looked like this with our call to our procedural method there. If we went with a declarative approach, we could simply do something like that. Way less code, and we don't have any, we don't have any subscribe or unsubscribe. How is that going to work? What about the subscribe and unsubscribe? How are we going to make this go? We already said this doesn't work unless you subscribe or unsubscribe. And Joe has it. We're going to use the async pipe. That's our next tip. Use the async pipe. Now, it's important not to get this pipe confused with our other kinds of pipe. We were just talking about RxJS pipelines and the .pipe keyword. This is a template kind of pipe, like our date pipe and our number pipe and all of those kinds of pipes. So it looks like this with that pipe character, that the vertical line that tells it to do async. So what we're doing is we're going to bind to our observable. So it's got the products dollar pipe async And what the async will do is automatically subscribe for us and unsubscribe for us. So we don't have to have that in our code. Yay. What the as does is anytime products dollar emits, it will emit into that variable so that we can then use it. So let product of products, we can then use that products variable that it emitted that array of products into. Are we good? Okay, so what we've just done is talk through the declarative data access pattern. So we have our products in our service, our products dollar also in our component that simply references the one in the service, and our async pipe in our template. And that is our first pattern. Are we good? Okay, next pattern. Oops, wait, marble diagram, can't forget that. So here's my incredibly simplistic marble diagram. So I call this a data stream because it's actually retrieving data, and there is my array of data, and of course it completes because it's one and done. The question is whether changing it from methods to a property make it more efficient. It does make for less code, and it also will make it easier to do more advanced things that we're going to see in a moment. All right, so moving on to our second pattern. So this is a different pattern that we're going to talk about next. In this case, we have now a drop down on our product list where you're going to pick a category. So we pick a category and then we only list the products for that category. Why would we want to do this? Well, maybe we have, you know, millions of products like Amazon, or hundreds of products, way too many for the user to scroll through. And we want to give them some kind of way to break down that criteria and only get then those products matching that criteria. All right, so what are we going to do? How do we begin to attack this as developers? How are we going to do it? What do we have? Well, we have the category that the user is going to pick. We have that action that the user is going to do. What do we want? We want all of the products for that category. Filter, to answer that comment, the filter would only work if we were going to get all the products and then filter them. But we want to just get the ones because we don't want to bring down 100,000 products. We only want to bring those down for the particular category. Okay, so what do we have? We have the action. What do we want? We want the list of products only for that category. When do we want it? Anytime the user performs that action, anytime they pick a new category. So I've said the word action several times here. Anytime you hear that yourself say, we have an action, or when do we want it? We want it when an action occurs. You want to think to yourself, let's go back to that. You want to think to yourself that we're going to follow a specific pattern that knows how to deal with actions. Okay, so our problem now is that we no longer have a method. And if we don't have a method, we have no way to pass in this category ID. So how are we going to get that data? How are we going to pass it in? Definitely not doing this because there is cat ID is going to give you undefined. There's no way it knows what that is. So what is our alternative? This brings us to our next tip. To respond to an action, use a subject or behavior subject. Now, a subject and behavior subject are special types of observables. So they're special kinds of observables that we create ourselves. So here's a subject. I'm using private to create the subject, and I'm using the new keyword to create a new instance of a subject. The generic argument there defines what I plan to emit into the subject I'm creating. So I want to pass in a number, that category ID. Now I want to make that private because I don't want any other code in the application other than this particular service to be able to emit things into that directly, or to be able to complete my stream, or to be able to arrow it out, or anyhow mess with my, my observable stream that I'm creating. Instead, that second line of code is exposing the read-only part, the observable part of that subject. And so that we are allowing to be public. And notice it has the $ suffix on it, identifying it as the observable. Okay, so that's a subject, and it's basically an observable that we're creating ourselves, that we're going to emit into ourselves. What's the difference between that and a behavior subject? A behavior subject allows us to have a default value. When you define a subject, it doesn't immediately emit anything until the stream, till we actually emit something into the stream. A behavior subject will initially emit a default value, which is in this case that 1 that you see in the constructor parameter. The other thing a behavior subject will do then is if someone subscribes late, they will get the last, the most recent emitted value. So they will always get a value when they start off. When would you use a subject versus a behavior subject? Well, in our particular case, we don't want a default category. We want the user to pick a category. So we don't want a default, so we want to use a subject. If we always wanted to start with a general category or a on sale category or whatever, then we could define our behavior subject with that particular ID. Okay, so the next thing I want to just bring up is how we emit the value. So we're going to use a subject and we're going to emit a value. Normally what we do is create a subroutine in the same service that we define the subject. We take in a parameter defining what it is that we want to emit into the stream, and then we call next. The subject has 3 methods on it. Next is 1. Anyone want to guess what the other 2 are?
Complete.
Anybody's quick typer? Error, that's correct. And complete, that's right. So it's very consistent with how this works. So we can next, we can error, we can complete. So here we're nexting in this category. So what we would do is when the user makes a change in the UI, the component would call selected category changed, passing in that category ID. Next would emit that into the stream, and then category selected action would emit it to anyone who has subscribed to that stream. Okay, so now let's go back to our pattern. So what did we say we had? We had our action. So now we've defined what we have with our subject. Somehow then we need to take that category ID and issue another HTTP request. So now we know that our category selected action is going to emit a category ID. So in that second line there where it says map, question, map, we get that category ID so we can use it in our inner observable. So notice that this is an observable inside our category selected action observable. So now we've got 2 levels of observable. So looking at this code, we have 2 problems. One, what kind of map should we use to make this actually work? And 2, if we use the async pipe and subscribe to our product's $, that will automatically subscribe to our category selected action $, but what's going to subscribe to that inner observable? And yay, several of you already have gotten that, but I'm going to go through it for those that don't know. All right, so we have our inner observable, we have some kind of map we're supposed to use, and that brings us to our next tip, which is leverage your IDE. How is your IDE going to help with this? Well, if we decided to try mapping, because that's usually the first thing we want to try is we want to try a map. So here's my code. Here's a screenshot from VS Code, and I just tried a map there, and I have that same line of code. If you hover over products $ in VS Code, it will show you kind of above that line that we have an observable of product array. And that's not what we want. We want an observable of product array. So that's one problem, that we have this wrapped value that isn't in the format that we're wanting it. And we also still have to deal with the fact that we've got that inner observable, which then leads us to our next tip. To subscribe to an inner observable and flatten the result, we want to use a higher order mapping operator, also called a flattening operator. Some higher order mapping operators, or these higher order mapping operators, automatically subscribe to the inner observable. They then flatten the resulting observable, so you'll get observable of your type, not observable of your type, which would be not what you wanted. And it automatically unsubscribes from the inner observable, so you don't have to worry about that inner observable at all. Some common higher order mapping operators: switch map stops the current operation and performs the new operation. Concat map performs each operation one at a time in order. And merge map performs each operation concurrently. And we're going to talk through an example of each of these in a minute to hopefully make more sense out of those if you're not already familiar with them. Okay, so we are going back to our retrieve on action pattern that we've been working on now that we kind of took our little side trip through higher order mapping operators. So what do we have again? We have our the user selected category. And now we have our code here with our pipe. And as per quite a few of you there, we're going to use a switch map. And here's our switch map. So it will automatically flatten our, first of all, it will automatically subscribe to our inner observable, and then it will automatically flatten the result and automatically unsubscribe from it. So if we hover over products $now in Visual Studio in VS Code, you would see that it is observable of product array, not observable of product array. So we'll get the right thing here. All right. So now the question, oh, here's my marble diagram. So on my action stream, so I call this an action stream because it's based on the user's action. The user clicked category 42. It runs through the switch map and it results in an array of products for that. If the user later says, no, I want category 15, it will again execute the switch map and provide you a list of products for that particular category. Okay. But the question is, why switch map? Why not concat map or merge map? So let's talk through an example of why switch map makes sense here. Let's say that we have 3 categories, 1, 2, and 3, just to make the numbers easy to remember. The user picks 2, no 3, no 1. Okay, with a switch map, what it will do is go out to get category, what did I say now? 3, 2, no, 2, 3, and 1. All right, so it's going to go out to get category 2, sees that the user picked category 3, cancel that request, switch over to 3, issue that request, see that the user picked 1, cancel and switch over to the 1, and only return then the last one that they picked, which was category 1. If we use concat map, what it would do if the user said 2, no 3, no 1, it would go get 2, wait for it to come back, then get 3, wait for it to come back, then get 1, and wait for it to come back. And depending upon your UI and the speed, it might be very confusing because the last thing they picked was 1 and they're getting 3, and a couple seconds later they'll see 2, and so on. Merge map, on the other hand, will issue them all at once or right away. So it would, if the user picked 2, then 3, then 1, merge map will shoot off 2, then 3, then 1. And if 2 happens to be a huge set of products and take longer, even though 1 was the last one they picked, it could actually return the results of 2 last, and that's what you would get here. So then you're going to have this really strange bug where sometimes when the user picks a category, right after another category, they're not seeing the right one. So red, no blue, yay. Why not? No, how does that, what's the other one with the birds? Anyway, no, your favorite color, that was it. What is your favorite color? Why not? So that was my answer. Why not concat map or merge map? All righty. So that was the end of that pattern. Our third pattern is the shape on action pattern. And so the idea here is that we're shaping the data. We aren't going to retrieve more data. So here we've got a list of products. When the user picks one, we want to display the detail. Now we could go back to the server and get it and follow the same pattern that we just looked at, the one to retrieve on action. But in our case, our products don't change very often. Once the user downloads them, that set of them, we can just filter it to display the one. So that's what we're going to look at for this pattern. Okay, so our question again is, what do we have? Well, in this case, we have our list of products and we have an action. Okay, as soon as I'm saying action, we're thinking to ourselves, hey, we're going to probably need a subject or behavior subject. What do we want? We want the detail for the selected product. When do we want it? Anytime the product changes. Okay, so here's our products. This is the exact code that we looked at just a moment ago with our switch map. So that's one of the things we have. The other thing that we have then is this action. So again, we're going to define a subject. Now we don't want to auto pick one of the products. So we don't want a behavior subject, we want a subject. So now we have two streams. We've got our product stream, which has all of our products, and our product selected action observable that emits the one that the user just picked. We need both of those to work together in order to find that ID that was emitted in that list of products. So how are we going to do that? Oh, that's it. Some Monty Python fans. How are we going to do that? Well, whenever you need to work with multiple streams, the first thing that you probably want to think about is a combination operator. Combination operators, for example, are combine latest, which emits a combined value when any of the observables emit, and they won't emit until all observables have emitted at least once. Now that sounds kind of complicated, but if you've ever in your code wanted your code to stop and wait to do the next step until it's retrieved the data back from the server, combine latest might be what you want. There's also a merge, which emits the one value when any of the observables emit. Merge is most often used when you're dealing with like things. So not customers and orders, but current customers and past customers that you want to merge them into a list of customers. So of types, things of similar type. Last one is fork join. When all observables complete, and that's an important part of this, when all observables complete, emit the last value from each observable into an array. When we talk about action observables, and we're talking about them continuing because the user could continue to pick different categories or continue to do paging or whatever they're going to do, those observables aren't going to complete. So you don't want to fork join them because they'll never emit anything because it won't emit until all of the observables you're fork joining are complete. All right, so the shape on action pattern. So what did we have? We've got our products. We also have our product selected subject, this action of what product we've just picked, and we are going to merge them using combine latest. So combine latest takes an array. I only have two that I'm combining, but I could be combining any number of them. What they emit then is an array where the first element is the emitted value from the first stream, the second element is the emitted value from the second stream, and so on, however many streams that you define. By doing that, that then gives us access to our actual list of products and the actual product ID, so we could use it to find the one that we're looking for. So that's very useful for shaping or finding or filtering or anything like that that you might want to do. All right, so our marble diagram, our data stream is the data that we originally requested. Then the user says, hey, I want the detail for product 1, and we get the SAW. And then if the user picks, hey, I want the third product, and then it will return X. All right, so our fourth and last pattern that we're going to cover here is the retrieve related data pattern. And we have two sort of subtypes here. Our first subtype is when there's a one-to-one relationship. So our product has one supplier and the product has an ID for that supplier, and we want to get the data related to that. So again, what do we have? We have our product, and the user selected that product. What do we want? We want the associated supplier. When do we want it? Anytime the user picks a different product, we want to get that product's supplier. So those questions weren't totally silly, right? they were useful. Okay, so as we said, we had the selected product. This was the code we just looked at. So this is defining that it's going to emit that one product that was selected by finding it in the observable with all the products in it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to, again, use switch map. So we're going to pipe our selected product through switch map so that it automatically subscribes to this inner observable and gets that associated supplier. So it's very similar. And again, we would use a switch map here because the user could say, I want product 1, no 7, no 15, and it will just keep canceling the prior ones and get the last one the user picked. All right, but what about many? What if you had many suppliers that could provide this product, and then when you need to reorder, you could pick from that list of suppliers? How do you deal with that? Say in this case, our product has then an array of supplier IDs, and we want to somehow go through that array to get all of these suppliers. So here is an example that is not the best implementation of how to do this. And the reason I'm doing this first is because it's very explicit and easier to talk through. So here I have product suppliers, dollars. So that's my observable. That's going to be the array of product suppliers associated with a product. So here's that selected product. I'm going to pipe it through a switch map just like I did before. But now instead of just using that ID, I'm going to use the array of IDs. So product.supplier IDs is an array. I'm going to use from, because what from does is it creates an observable from an array. Why do I want to create an observable from the array? Because I want to pipe it some more. I can't pipe an array. I need it to be an observable in order to have it emit the individual IDs and to be able to pipe those individual IDs through this pipeline. So inside my pipeline, I'm using a merge map to get this, take the supplier ID and then get the supplier. And I'm using a higher order mapping operator because again, I want to have it automatically subscribe to this inner observable and unsubscribe, and also to flatten it. Why merge map here? Well, let's envision that we had switch maps. So my product ID, supplier IDs, for example, just to be simple, let's say they're 1, 2, and 3. If I had switch map, it would go to get 1, cancel it, get 2, cancel it, get 3, and I'd only end up with 3. When what I want is all of them. So you would never want to use switch map in that particular case. I could use concat map, and what that would do is get 1, wait for it to come back, then get 2, wait for it to come back, then get 3, which if you need them in order might be what you want to do. Merge map will go, okay, I need 1, 2, 3, it'll send all those out and it'll just collect them as they come back, not concerned about order. The last thing then we do is a to array. And what that to array will do is ensure that each of these individual return suppliers are added to an array. Otherwise, our product suppliers will emit one at a time, and our UI will show one, and then it'll disappear, and then it'll show the next one, it'll disappear. And we want it to show the array of them. I'm hoping that's making sense. All right, so I said this is not the best implementation. What do you really want to do? Well, let's take this whole piece here and replace it with one operator. Anybody want to guess what it is? I'll give you a second. Looking, okay. So it is fork join. So what we can do instead is a fork join, and a fork join basically does what all that other stuff did, only it does it with one operator or one creation function, fork join. So what this is doing is it's taking our supplier IDs, it's mapping them all, it's automatically subscribing to our inner observables, and it's joining those all together into an array for us. And it still then results in product suppliers dollar being an array of product suppliers. Okay. All righty. So in a marble diagram, there's our product stream. So we had a saw that the user picked, and it's going to, in this case, there were only two suppliers. It's going to fork join them, and then it's going to give those to us. And if the user then picked another one, it would then have more data streams and put them together and emit it. I got lazy and didn't make it really long and fancy. All right, so what patterns did we cover? We covered the declarative data access pattern. And one of the benefits of that pattern is that it makes it a whole lot easier to use any of these other patterns. And you can use that anytime you want to retrieve simple data. Then we've got a retrieve on action pattern. And this is good for retrieving based on a user selection. So we could have used that if we actually wanted to go to the server every time the user picked a new product. We can use it for user selection of a category and only want to get products for a category. You can use it for paging. I only want the first page of data. Now I want the second page of data. So you can use the same pattern, that exact same set of pipeline operators for paging. The shape on action pattern we can use for filtering, mapping, or transforming an observable on user selection. So that's making the assumption that you're not going out to get new data, but rather you're going to somehow modify the data that you have, filtering or transforming it in some way. And then the last one was retrieve related data pattern. One of the most common uses for that one is to deal with users. So the user logs in, you get the user ID, then you take that ID to get the related data, their posts or their customers or their orders or whatever having to do with that user. And it can be one, in that case, it would be one user ID getting all the data for that. Or in our example, we had multiple IDs. All right, so here are some links. I did an example called Angular-action streams, which shows how to do some of these action streams. How many of you are familiar with Tour of Heroes? Does anybody work through that? The Tour of Heroes is on the, I see a couple of hands going up. So what I did is I took the Tour of Heroes from the Angular documentation and I converted the whole thing to be a completely declarative approach using some of these patterns. So if you're familiar with Tour of Heroes and you want to see what it would look like in a declarative way, that's that. And I just wanted to end with one quote that I wanted to share from Amanda Gorman. If you haven't seen her poem or heard her poem, it's absolutely beautiful. But I wanted to end with this, and my hope for all of us is that we can be the light, not only for our families and our local communities, but our Angular community as well. And with that, I want to thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
Taking my job, Eric.
Beat me to it, man.
Um,
Hey, I just wanted to do a quick reminder though. Code of conduct, y'all. Everybody's doing great, so I'm not worried about it. But in case anybody joined late, code of conduct keeps us safe. If we abide by what it is, and I'm going to post it in the chat, then everybody will have a good time. So that's what we're all about here. And then the other thing I wanted to remind you of is if you would like to be on the screen supporting the speaker and nodding and raising your hand so that they can be like, yeah, these people support me, then, you know, just let me know in chat and I will add you. So that's it. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
You're good. Okay, so next we're going to hear from Mark Thompson. Mark loves to teach and code. He's had the honor of being an award-winning university instructor and senior level software engineer. He comes with a passion for creating meaningful learning experiences. He's had over a decade of developing solutions across the tech stack. Mark likes to use that experience to help him break down the fear of coding. Lately, Mark has been spending his time as a developer relations engineer at Google on the Angular team. So let's welcome Mark and hear what he has to say. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so pumped up to be here with you folks. First and foremost, I can't even start my presentation without acknowledging just how phenomenal Deborah was. And when I say that I get smarter when I listen to her, I'm not kidding. So RxJS is a very complex topic when you're learning it for people. And the way she's explained it, I feel like it's just so illuminating. And I feel like people get a sigh of relief after they hear her explain it. And I'm one of those people because I just love the way she explains it also. Can we just give like a huge round of applause to Deborah wherever you are? Just go ahead and give that round of applause. Just know that energy is out there with you. All right, so here's what I need. So I see the people, I'm gonna call you folks the ambassadors today. Anybody who's like on camera, you're gonna be my ambassador, just kind of like be there and let me know how this party is going. And here's what I need from you right now, your first job as an ambassador. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay, let's go. Now, this is for everybody in the room. I need you to get that left hand up right now, right where you are, get that left hand up. Check this out. That's a high five from me to you because you are phenomenal. Thanks for hanging out. All right, so yeah, my name is Mark. I work on the Angular team at Google, and today we're going to talk about Angular and the marvelous mobile journey. So this person right here, this little guy, this is my kid. If you ever see me on Twitter, you know that I call him the Air, but it's a really weird thing because anyone who has kids knows it's like either you have money or you have kids, but you don't have both because they take all your money. And I feel like, I don't know what he's going to be the heir of by the time he turns 18, but he's the heir, no doubt. But here's what he said to me the other day that I think you folks will find interesting. He said, Dad, I want to reuse my Angular skills to make mobile apps. That's what the heir said to me. And then this is what I said back to him. Is that how we ask for things? And then he said, please, the magic word. All right. And then I said, okay, that's better. And let's actually think about what he was asking us for. Because, you know, you have a lot of Angular skills. Like you folks in the room right now, a lot of you are, even when we were talking about jobs, et cetera, you folks were looking at senior roles and all these types of things. And there are roles for a full stack with .NET and Angular. So you already have a ton of Angular skills. So then the question is, well, should we consider Angular for mobile? And that's really a great question. And together, we're going to look at some reasons why the answer to that question is, I think, yes. But before that, let's talk just a little bit about app development. First and foremost, a lot goes into making an app. I bet you if I took a survey of the room right now, I ask you, have you tried to make a mobile app before? And most people will say at least, yes, they've tried, right? They may not have gotten it out to the App Store, but they've at least tried it. And it takes time, it takes expertise. You have to think about the platforms. And so here's what I think about the cost of building a mobile app. If you're an organization, it's somewhere between like $15,000 to greater than $100,000. Right, depending on the path that you take, because you could be looking at, I'll do an iOS app and I'll do an Android app. So we need two different teams for that. And then there's the time. that it takes. Yeah, it can go from a month if you have like a really basic app, or it can go up to more than 9 months. I've seen teams take a year to develop an app because of the reasons we're going to talk about today. And here's one of the biggest things that drives up the first two things. So this is what causes the cost to go up and the time, is that you have to decide what you're going to do with your teams. Are you going to do iOS? Are you going to do Android? Are you going to do reskill your internal teams? How will you handle that? Well, here's what I think. Here's where Angular becomes very interesting. Well, number one, it's reuse of skills. Like I alluded to before, you have those hard-won Angular skills. You have those hard-won, RxJS skills that you've already mastered, right? You spent a lot of time mastering those things. And so you want to be able to reuse those skills. So that's where Angular kind of makes a really compelling case. Then here's the thing I really love. It's the reuse of code. How exciting is it if you have a web application that you've already built with your web skills and your Angular skills, and then you could reuse almost all, if not all of that code to build a mobile app? I know I'm already sounding like a dream, it sounds like a dream that's, people have been searching after since the days of Java. Like, I get it, write once, run anywhere. Like, I get it. But it's a dream that won't die. People are still looking for this, okay? Now, I am going to say that I'm having the same problem that everyone else had, where I lost the chat. And I wanted to see what everybody's saying in case people had questions. Let me see something. How do you get the chat up? Nope, still didn't come back. Oh, well. If you're saying questions to me, then someone's going to have to relay them because I don't know where my chat box went. Okay.
I'll be happy to do that for you. Sometimes it's minimized at the bottom and you can highlight it with your mouse, but sometimes it's difficult. So sorry about that.
No problem.
It's in the little it's in the little ... menu on the right side of the little panel. So you got to click that.
It's funny how there's like a million places it could be.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to let it ride, and I'm just going to trust in the crew to be amazing and give me any questions, because I don't want to hurt you folks' time. You folks are hanging out with me, and I want to honor that time. Okay, very, very cool. Now, so that's what we're looking at. So reuse of time, reuse of skills. And yeah, so here's what I thought we could do today. So I built an Angular app. Oh, surprise, right? Oh my God, it's an Angular Meetup. He built an Angular app. Yeah, I built an Angular app, right? And it's called Health Notes. And here's what it's going to do for us. It's just a web app that allows you to track your symptoms leading up to a doctor's appointment. This is something that I've needed. And even with the child, you want to keep track of what's happening on the date and the time. And then you can tell your doctor, well, here's what happened. Here's when it happened. And so you can be a really good advocate for yourself. Okay, so that application lives right here. So this thing is working. Like, this thing is already working. So for instance, I had some oatmeal. Okay, well, let me zoom in a little bit so people can see what I'm typing. There we go. Okay, I had some oatmeal. Feels bad. So that's my first health note. I had some oatmeal, feels bad. All right, so this is my Angular app. All right, now, this is, and then let me show you some code so you can see that it's just, you can see what I have. I just have my navigation, I have my home component, so nothing fancy here. This application was built with material, with Angular material, so I just included that, and you can see like I have my note screen, okay? So there's no real magic here, all right? But it's just an Angular app for us to start with. Now, so let's talk about our mobile journey. So each of our solutions that we're going to talk about, they have their pros and some cons, and I want to try to be as honest as I can about these, but remember, this is my opinion, right? So you take what I say with a grain of salt. It's my opinion. But when you get your grain of salt, you got to do it like this. Take it with that type of grain of salt, okay? Just like Salt Bay. All right. I make myself laugh.
Nice.
All right. I make myself laugh. Okay, here we go. Now, the first part of our journey is going to be our good old web standard friend, PWA. Now, for folks, I want to make sure that we all know what PWAs do in general. And at a high level, PWAs allow you to use your existing web skills and technology to make installable applications, right? And PWA stands for Progressive Web Application. They can be installed on your desktop or on your mobile device, which is really compelling for people because you can get kind of a 2-for-1 here, right? So if you do some really nice design with your application with the viewport sizes, you can have something that looks different on mobile and it looks different on the desktop, but it's still going to be your existing Angular app. So it's built with web technology. So remember our kind of driving force, which we want to do reuse of skills. As an Angular person, you probably want to reuse your Angular skills. So you can do that with this. Here's what's really cool. Now, they have offline support due to this thing called a service worker, which will allow you to like cache requests. So let's say you make a request out to a server to get some data. You can cache those requests with the service worker so your application still works offline. And because the browsers in general are becoming more powerful, there are some really cool browser APIs like location. There's geolocation, there's accelerometer you can probably work with, there's Bluetooth. Now, mind you, some of these are going to be available in some browsers and not other browsers, but think about how rich the browser API is. And with the PWA, you're still using your regular web app to do this. Now, there's a lot of heavy lifting to get a PWA installed in Angular. All right, I need you to get ready. Brace yourself. You got to add the schematic for Angular/PWA. And that's it. So that is the heavy work that you have to do. So let's actually try this in real life. We're going to do this together, okay? All right, so I'm going to go into my VS Code. Now, as my friend Angie says, the code should be so big that you really don't need to squint. You should be able to just look at the screen and read it. I like that answer. So ever since I met her, my friend Angie Jones, I'm always going to make my code super huge. And she came into the chat, said that's correct. All right, so you should be able to see my code and see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go straight to the terminal here. Let's open up a new terminal. Okay, so I'm on my main branch, which is just running this application that you see on 4200. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to a different branch. So not only am I going to write some code today, I'm also going to try to use Git with 60 or 70 people watching me. So, you know, that's always fun. So I'm going to go to my PWA branch. Looking good. All right, so here's what I have to do. I just need to do my ng add at Angular/PWA. So this is called schematic. So this is going to bring in our plugin kind of for PWA and convert this application to a PWA. So this is the step that it's going to do. Now, some of you folks are probably interested in, like, what is it going to do behind the scenes? Don't just smoke and mirrors me, Mark. What's going to happen behind the scenes? Well, here's what's happening. One, it's going to create the icons that you need for the different sizes, different resolution of screen. So you'll see that happen, okay? Also, it's going to update your Angular.json. It's going to add support for service workers, and it's going to add this really important file called a manifest, which is kind of how you organize and configure your PWAs on your application. Now, I've just, you know, I kind of broke it because I kind of changed the way the application was running while it was running. So that's not a problem. This is not a problem at all because I just need to restart it and it'll be right back up. So I'll do ng serve --HMR, right? And we just released this in version 11. Update your Angular apps, get to version 11, all right? Because we have some really cool features. We have improved support for HMR where you don't have to make any code changes. Now, with that, you know, this is going to start up. But if I want to see this as a PWA, one thing that I can do, all right, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next step. Well, I just have to do a build. So I'll do ng build prod here. Okay, so my application is back, right? So still feeling bad after oatmeal, right? That never changed. Okay, application still functional. Now, if I'm going to do a build, actually, I'm going to do something even better for you folks. You know what's really interesting about PWAs is that you can install them from a website. Okay, that's what's really interesting. Can we do that together? Can we all install my PWA from a website? I think we can. Let's make that happen. Let's do an ng add Angular Fire. Now, Angular Fire, so this is for the official Firebase schematic for Angular. So I'm going to add this to my application by doing ng add. And we're going to see how the story unfolds here. All right. Now, as it's installing, what we're going to use Firebase for is we're going to deploy to Firebase hosting. And then I'm going to give you a URL, and then you can go on your desktop or your mobile phone if you want, and you'll be able to install this PWA on your device. And you'll be able to see how it runs when it's actually running as a PWA, which makes this very, very exciting. All right, so these NPM packages are installing. One of the steps you would have had to have done before to get this to work as smooth as it's going to work for me right now is that you would have had to already sign into Firebase with the Firebase CLI. I've already done that step, but I already have a project ready for you folks. I'm going to hit enter. Now, how do I get this off of my computer and into the cloud? I know you folks love this part. I'm just going to do an ng deploy. Now, it's no secret that for me, I love all the Angular tooling. And I'm a big proponent of use the tooling because it makes your life easier. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm using all the tooling that's built in. And what I want you to keep track of, how much of the code have you seen me change so far to get to a PWA that's going to be installable on your machine? None, right? I've actually installed like 0. I mean, I've updated 0 code. And now we're doing our production build. And as this is running, now my machine is a little bit taxed right now because I have a bunch of stuff running and only have 8 gigabytes of RAM. I know, I don't have an M1 Mac Mini. I only have like a regular Mac Mini.
What
so
the heck?
I'm not fancy.
Come
yeah,
on.
what the heck? What the heck? All right, so this URL that you see on the screen, I'm gonna paste this in the chat, but if you can, go to this URL on your mobile device. I promise no hacking, okay? It's no hacking. But if you can, go to ng-mobile-app.web.app. Okay, I want to put that right on the screen, make sure everybody can see what I'm talking about. Go to that URL. I'm going to go to it right here in my browser at the same time. Now, while you're doing that, I want to show you something because I care about you. I'm going to show you something. If you look right at this top corner, there is now a plus sign to install this application. So if you're at ng-mobile-web, you should be able to do this. So I'm going to do it on my phone too. So I have my phone right here just in case you folks want to see it. I'm going to do the same thing. All right. And so this integration is just because of the way that Angular and Firebase is working. But remember, you can deploy to any hosting that has a schematic already set up. So you folks are going to be great. All right. So I'm on my device too. So you can see it right here. But let's see if you can get that on the come on. Come on, Sony, autofocus. See at the bottom of my phone right here, there's an add to home screen button. You should have that too. If you tap on that, you have just installed a PWA as a mobile, on your mobile as a web app. So now, on my device, I have access to my Angular thing. So let's see, it's probably really hard to see. I probably should do like some type of screen share, but you see my little Angular app right there? Let me tap on that so people know what the party's going. And there you go. That just launched like a regular mobile app on my phone in real time. I just showed you folks this, right? So that just launched on my phone as a mobile app. So as a PWA, yeah, that was pretty good. All right, that was pretty good because now I'm able to like take my existing application, and because it's running in a on my device as a PWA progressive web app, there are a couple of things that I get to do. One, I can really customize in Angular how to deal with the updates to the application. So we're in a really good space, but let's take a really honest look at this solution, right? Because I'm not trying to sell you anything. This is a talk where we're going to talk about the good and the bad of the solutions. Here's what's really interesting. Mobile and desktop, that works because here's the other thing I could have showed you. I'm going to install it right now from the web. And now, guess what? Bam. Now I have a desktop app. This opens up as a desktop app right now. And does it still work though? Let me see. I don't trust this. Add some apples. I'm in good shape. All right, so I don't feel bad anymore. I'm in good shape. So there's my app working. Here's a really cool thing. We use all of our existing, so when we talked about the competing of existing skills and existing technology that we know and code reuse, skills reuse, code reuse, this is 100% skill and code reuse, right? So if you're talking to your engineering like team leads, your VP of engineering, this is a good solution here because this is existing. Then minimal code changes. Now, I didn't do any code changes, but I don't want you to think that once it's a PWA, that is the end of the story. Once it's a PWA, you can do even more to keep track of updates and let the user know, hey, a new update of this application is available, right? And you can find out if there's something went wrong, you can have much finer grained control. And honestly, PWAs are having a party right now. I don't know if you saw, but YouTube just had a release of their PWA. And on iOS, Google Stadia runs as a PWA on iOS. That is magical. I did not work on that team, but just the idea that that tool works through a PWA is pretty magical. So how you can get there is pretty cool. All right, we talked about all the great things. Here's what you got to be concerned about. So there's a lack of parity on certain browsers, right? Like Safari, for example. Safari is much more locked down when it comes to like browser APIs that you get to access. So you have to consider that if someone installed it on Apple with as a Safari PWA, you might get some differences, right? Distribution. So we just did a mobile app. Now, a lot of us remember fondly the days where you want to install Photoshop, you went to adobe.com and you just installed Photoshop directly from the manufacturer site. But the app stores changed the way that we interact with software for the large part. So people look for mobile apps in mobile app stores. Distribution of this as is going to be very hard, right? It's possible. I know that people are talking about how can we distribute PWAs through the app store, but right now it's not a smooth process. Consider that if that's important to you. And then finally, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more taxing on the more complex your app is, more taxing it's going to be on your device, right? Because they're not completely optimized like mobile apps are, like native apps are. Something to consider. All right. So that was PWAs. Let's talk about another option that we have, okay? Because one of the big issues was being distributed and then like the battery drain, right? So there's a tool called Capacitor. Now, Capacitor is really positioned to take over from where Cordova left off. And let me explain kind of what the solution is. So there's this idea of using your web technology, but having the native app experience. Okay, so you have your native app experience where you can actually have your app installed on the device through an app store. You can get access. So one, it can be installed on desktop or mobile, right? But it's built with web technology that you already know. And then you have access to native APIs on the platform. So you can write code or get plugins with something like a Capacitor.js as a wrapper to your current Angular app. You drop in Capacitor, and then you can extend your access of your application, right, into like native app territory where you can get access to the battery and payments and NFC and Wi-Fi, all the kind of stuff that you can't do directly through the browser, you have access with Capacitor. Okay, so Capacitor wraps your native app, it wraps your web application, turning it into a native application. All right, now let me dive a little bit deeper here into explaining what this means. All right, so here's the workflow in order to get Capacitor into your application. Now remember, our goals are always going to be what? Skills reuse, code reuse. All right, skills and code reuse. We want those two things. So to get it set up, here's what I did. This is a real true story. First, you add the Capacitor. Oh, Mike is here. Mike is in the building. Hello, hello, hello. All right, so you add Capacitor Angular schematic. Then you do a build. I did a build to prod so it can bundle up all my code. And then I just added a target. So this is my workflow to add to an existing app versus starting from a fresh app. So I took the same app that you folks used, and then I just added Capacitor to it, and this is how I did that. And then finally, you deploy to that target. So let's look at how that turned out. So now, for this part of the example, we have to look at another tool. So you still write all your code in something like a Visual Studio Code if you want. All your web code, you still write here. Nothing changes in that tooling. But when you're ready to deploy it to a device, like an Android or iOS device, here's the step that I had to take. So I brought in, so let's switch to that branch. Let's do git checkout, and then we'll go to cap. Okay, let's see, let's do a git stash just for a second. All right, cool. All right, and then we'll do git checkout, and we'll go to cap, which is my capacitor branch. And the reason I'm doing branches here, so you can see it's the same code as I go. That was the important part. Okay, I don't want to trick you folks. All right, so I'm going to open an existing project here, and so when I go into my project, so I have this is my NG Mobile demo. Okay, open, and then I'm going to go to my Android project because that was the one that I added. This is an Android emulator. So I open up my Android project. So this is so I can deploy it to the device. This is the step that you have to do. Okay, so this tool is Android Studio that I'm using. All right, now there might be a way to do this from the command line that I'm just not familiar with, but this was the steps that I had to take to be able to deploy it. Now it's loading up my devices, and then what I'll do is I'll hit play, but you know I did this already just so you folks can see how it works, and I already have it installed. So here it is as a native app on my device. And yeah, here we go. So I have my Health Notes app. I can go back to my home screen. All right, my computer is really struggling. Hold on one second. Man, I even crashed the Android emulator. This is not a capacitor thing. This is my computer running out of resources. I don't want to give capacitor a bad name.
You're gonna write Google and tell them to give you a better machine.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, so okay, you know what? I had something else and I felt not so great. You know what I had? I had some cookies before bed. Did
not
agree with me. All right, shouldn't be doing that. I should not have been doing that. Yeah, and Android Studioing. That's the other thing you got to remember. Android Studio is a pretty intense application, big resource use. All right, but this is my native application, right? So this is native. Now, I could extend our application right now to do things like tap into the accelerometer or tap into the vibration motors on the phone. I can now add code to do that if I want to take it to that level. I have that option. And here's the great thing with that, this is all I did to get Capacitor up and running. So this was a drop-in solution, which I think is huge when we're going for skills reuse. All right, now that I know Mike is in the building, Mike, I care about you, but I'm gonna be honest from my experience. All right, so first and foremost, I love the fact that this was plug and play. That was the best part. I didn't have to change my code to get it with a native wrapper. So now I can drop that, I can deploy this application as is to an app store. Right? I don't have to worry about the distribution issues with the PWAs. I don't have to worry about that. Web tech, all my web skills are reused, 100% reuse of my web skills. And then access to the native API. So if I want to take my application further, I can. Here are the things that I would say you have to think about, considerations. Now, some people will argue this point. People have argued this to me that it's not truly a native UI. So when you're looking at this application, it looks great to me, but a lot of this is going to depend on the tools that you use to develop your UI. Now, the folks who make Capacitor have a framework called Ionic, which they have done so much work to cover the gap where it is really hard to distinguish between, let's say, a truly native app that's written in Swift or Kotlin and an Ionic app, right? They've done things with the response time to tapping, animations, transitions. A lot of work goes into that. I did not use that. So that's a disclaimer. I did not use that for this example. okay, because I want to use an application that I was going to deploy right now. All right, now there's sometimes some App Store drama where Apple will have have a fit around using certain web view technology, right? So like, oh, don't use this version of the web view, use this one. So sometimes they'll reject like apps that use these types of wrappers. You sometimes have to deal with it, sometimes you don't. But to their credit, the team who works on Capacitor and Ionic, they're always right on top of it. Whenever this happens, they always have answers for you quickly. And then here's the other thing that goes against our tenets of maximum code reuse and then maximum skills reuse. Sometimes you might need to write native code twice. And here's what I mean by that. If there's some type of functionality that you want to tap into that there isn't a plugin for already, you might have to write some code for Kotlin to do it, to write a plugin, and you might have to write some code for iOS to do it in Swift, right? So that may come up that you have to do that. But this is still, I think, a compelling issue because of all the problems it solves from just a pure PWA. Right? This solves a lot of your problems if this is the direction you want to go with an existing app. But here's what I want to say. You can learn more about Capacitor. I just happen to know that Mike and team are giving a talk tomorrow. You can follow this QR code, and I'm going to have it in the show notes for my presentation, a link directly to it where you can go find out more about the workflow, get in deep, get some details. All right, so you can find out more. All right, friends, now let's take this to the last chapter of our story. So we've looked at PWAs, we've looked at Capacitor as a solution, and now let's look at this other one called NativeScript. Okay, let's look at NativeScript and how this could help us solve our problems. So NativeScript gives developers what some people look for, which is that truly native like look and feel, where it feels like a mobile app. You can it doesn't feel like there's any lag or anything like that. It just feels and looks just like a mobile app from the way that it works. So this is akin to something like a React Native or a Flutter in a way that you kind of get that type of experience. But NativeScript allows you to bring in your own framework, which is all the solutions we talked about today allowed me to bring in my own framework, which was Angular. All right. And let's talk about some of the compelling features. I say, this is my opinion, Mark's opinion. Remember, grain of salt. Okay. My opinion, the magic with NativeScript is that you can code against native APIs directly. Now, let me kind of tell you what that means. You could literally write code for like a java.util.date object. They have this marshaling that it does for you, that instead of having to write plugins separately, I can just write the code directly against the platform, period. I don't have to go through a bridge. I don't have to write any code that, any custom bridge code. If I want to access Apple Pay, for example, or Apple ID or Face ID, I can write TypeScript code right in the same component class to access Face ID. That is magic, in my opinion, how they do that. That is like their claim. I think that's their claim to fame. That's the thing that I will be talking about the most if I were promoting this platform. But it's cross-platform, which is really great. It's built with web technology, and I put asterisks here because it's JavaScript or TypeScript, not HTML, but actually XML. So you're probably thinking, what's the first thing that has to change if it's XML? And we're talking about our code reuse and our skills reuse. What's the first thing that has to change? Type it in the chat, let's see. All right, so maybe I'm asking this question, I can ask it a better way. Well, so it's not XML for data transfer, it's actually XML for the templates instead of HTML for the templates. So your component templates cannot be reused. And that is the first thing that has to change, is the way that you do your UI, because you have to use their UI because of the native components that they're trying to do. So that automatically changes the level of effort when you go with NativeScript, okay? And CSS is a subset of CSS, and some custom CSS that they do support Sass, but it's not the full CSS spec, right? So it's kind of a subset that you have to work with. It's pretty robust, but it's not completely the same as our other two candidates. But again, this direct access native APIs from the JavaScript code is pure magic, all right? It's pure magic. Now, to install NativeScript, I'm gonna tell you my experience. Installing NativeScript, I started with installing the CLI tool for NativeScript, and then you have two paths that you can follow. You can do a new project, or you can do what's called a code sharing project, which allows you to add NativeScript to your existing application. I could not get that to work. Okay, and even getting it to just kind of run was a little bit more complex for me. But I did get it to run, of course, and we can look at the outcome. So let's look at how this all plays out. So here's that same home component that I showed you folks in my HTML template for my component class. So this doesn't look anything like what I showed you, right? Because this is XML, and this entire UI is built using their UI language, which is fine. Not complaining about that, but this is a change that you have to make. So what ended up happening was, as I was building out my UI in NativeScript, I was referring back to my HTML templates, but I wasn't able to transfer anything. So I was able to like get inspiration, but I wasn't able to transfer. And here's what we ended up with. So here's my NativeScript application already installed. That looks pretty good. Now, does it look much better than our other version? So let's see if we go back to our home screen. So this is what I was telling you about, like the look and feel of native. Even through the computer screen, I'm going to be honest with you, it's probably hard to see that there's any difference. It looks the same to me, right? But you'll notice that there are some small changes, like the drawer animation is a little bit more polished than what I had just coming as a web app, right? So getting in here, I have some good news to report. I did have some gummy bears. Feels good. Right? All right. So I have my same kind of note symptom tracking app. So this is a viable solution, but here's what I found out. When you look at the structure of your project, it looks very similar to the things that you would do normally. So you have your components in their own folders, etc. But then you end up with your app resources. And this is the type of stuff that where it gets to be a little bit more on the custom side. So when I was going to display an image, I had to add it as a resource here, and I couldn't get it to work just from like an assets folder, which means that I'm having to change more code to make things work if I'm going to go to NativeScript route, right? I'm having to make more changes. But on the opposite side, though, if this is very smooth, right? Fluid animation, nice responsive app, look and feel, very, very nice. Good documentation, good plugin system. So how does this measure up? Right? I also had kind of, doesn't feel so good, feels bad. How does this measure up? Well, the native UI is going to be a win because you may have some, what I call like pixel peeping, where people are looking really hard to see what the differences are. Most corporate clients probably won't care about this type of stuff. So, you know, you have to talk to your client. Most clients won't even know the difference between your web UI, your native UI. They want to care about performance, installs, they want to track those analytics. Okay, code sharing. So I was able to share like my services. I couldn't completely share my component classes. Why? Because I had to add in code that dealt with with all the NativeScript proprietary stuff, right? You know, it's open source, but the NativeScript framework, I had to go in there and make changes, right? To deal with the NativeScript stuff, like my button handler and all that kind of stuff, right? Direct platform API access. Like I said, this is going to be the cream on the cream of the cake. Okay, here's where I found the challenges. One, it required me to rewrite my entire UI. Okay, entire UI, had to redo it. Code sharing. Again, see, this is a pro and a con because I wasn't able to completely share my code because of the config. The config was just a little messy for me. Wasn't having the best time with this one. And then web tech support. Yeah, you're not going to be able to use the same like browser technology that you already use. You're going to be able to use TypeScript and JavaScript, a lot of your CSS skills, but then you'll have to like, for your HTML side, that stuff is not going to be applicable here with your NativeScript application. Okay. But this is real, I'm telling you, this is really compelling when you have to go beyond, let's say, when you want to go beyond with the native support in your application, this one is going to give you some really compelling options. And I like what they do at NativeScript. So I just had the most trouble with this one, okay, in terms of it, because this was not a complete drop-in solution. I had to make a lot of code changes to get this one to work. All right, so this is how we saw it. PWAs, upsides, downsides, right? So really fast to get the stuff working, installation and deployment. We saw how fast that was, but distribution and some performance can be an issue. You pick up the distribution, you pick up the native API access to make things to get complete feature parity across platforms, which is really great with Capacitor. But we talked about what some of the issues could be there. And then native script, I love the native UI. I love the native access to the API, but then some of the downsides where the code sharing isn't as drop in. And so you have to consider that if you make this your solution for your mobile app with your Angular code, you need to consider that. So now that you know what is happening here, what the state of the world is, at least from our mobile journey together, well, what should you do? Well, still, no matter what, I want you to go and build great apps. Use your Angular skills to go and build great apps, no matter what the modality is. Okay, friends, it has been so much fun to hang out with you. If you're interested in the slides, the code examples, the link to the talk for tomorrow that Mike and company are giving, head over to marktexan.com/resources or scan this little QR code. That's going to take you right to find everything that you need. And can I just say thank you for hanging out with me tonight? Thanks for staying up. Thank you for being awesome. And thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, Mark. That was great. Very, very fun. I've been to a few PWA talks, somewhat similar to this, but this was the first one where showed an example where you could actually like see how the PWA works on your phone, things like that. So that makes it much more impactful. So thank you for that. That was awesome. I guess now we can move into our quiz contest section of the evening. If you are prepared, Eric.
Yeah, I'm prepared.
Frantically writing questions, it looks like.
No, I was frantically writing questions. So if you saw my face like glow and then like get dark again, that's completely why. Every time I heard something, I was like, oh, that'd be a great quiz question. I was jumping over there. All right, so let me go ahead and present my screen. Let's see. Screen. So there you go. And I will copy this link and put it in there for you. We do this so that we can figure out who to give the prizes to. That way, if you introduce randomness, then it gets confusing. And is it really random? Who knows? So, but if we actually make you earn it, then we make you want to pay attention too. So, not that you needed any help this time with two amazing speakers. Why is this not copied? All right, fine, make me copy. Where's the chat? I see what you mean. Like, where'd the chat go? Here we go.
Yeah, it's super confusing because it disappears out of the bar where it usually is.
Yeah, and I already had mine open, so there was like a square just like somewhere off to the sides. All right, so we're starting to get some people. Let's see, I'm going to set this for 12 minutes. Awesome. Also, I wanted to highlight that one of our speakers from next event is actually here right now. I don't know how to pronounce your last name correctly. I totally meant to ask, but it's Mike Callahan or Mike Callaghan. I'm not sure which.
You were right the first time.
I was right the first one? Sweet. So look forward to that. We also have some another great speaker lined up next time. So everybody's here, come back. Even if you're a speaker, come back. We love to have you. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start this probably, in fact, let's do 10 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and start this in 1 minute. So go ahead and jump in there. The link is in the chat. Sorry if the music's loud or something like that. I can disable the music, I think. Sort of adds to the fun though. This is for prizes. So the top prize is going to be the forgot what it's called, like a tumbler or water bottle, by our awesome new sponsor today. And then the other one is going to be a Thinkster Pro 1-month membership for free. And I didn't have time to ask NGConf to give us a free ticket. So that won't be this time, but it might be next time, which is always a really cool thing to earn from a meetup. It's a conference ticket. So, okay, I'm gonna get started. Here's the race, and you guys will be able to see where everybody's at on my screen. Yeah. Also, if anybody wants to talk, you can let me know and I'll add you as a panelist, even though you may have started already. It's sort of fun to watch people progress. Hopefully the questions are not too hard, but also not too easy. Oh, wow, look at that. We got Josh Black in the lead. Way to go, Josh. Oh, he's fighting with Mike Callahan. This is fierce. Oh, Dark Winter. I'd say, Michael, you could also play, but I wouldn't give you any prizes if you want. Michael Madsen, that is. We got a couple mics on the call today.
Yeah, you definitely have to say last names with a name like Michael. And that doesn't even always work.
It was a cool surprise to see Mike Hartington join us too. I'm impressed. We got the number of Google developer experts on this call, right through the roof. John is on fire. Rogelio on fire. I'm guessing it's Rogelio. Haha, I was right. Do you say Rohi for short, or like is that a real nickname, or is that just shorter than your full name? Oh, actually, this is a great time to. Oh, okay, cool. This is a great time for me to bring up the company I just joined. They're named Partner. They do really amazing things with PRM software, which is kind of like CRM, but specifically for channel sales. So I think that we're also hiring. I don't have any like firm things, so but if you guys want to look on LinkedIn, there's some job opportunities on there. Check that out. You need to drop out, no problem, guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this, especially Mark and Deborah. I can't thank you enough for coming in, teaching us about these subjects. So I will get the recording edited so that there's not like a giant 30-minute space in the beginning of it. And then I will get that put up onto YouTube sometime this week. So thanks again.
Okay, thank you everyone for having me. I had a blast. I hope to hang out with you folks again. Thank you again to Deborah for being so amazing. And yeah, looking forward to the next time, friends.
See you, Mark.
Bye.
I'd like to say thanks too, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach me on Twitter. That's a really good place to ask general kinds of questions. I'm going to put my Twitter in to the chat, and it was also on my slides. It's just Deborah Kurata, pretty easy. And I'm going to take off too and have some dinner.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Deborah.
Your talk was excellent.
Thank you.
All right, we're coming up on the end of this thing here. And so let me tell you at the end of this, whoever the prize winners are, first and second place winners, I'm going to need your email address so that the people distributing the prizes can each company can reach you and get the address and excuse me to ship stuff out. I know the Proven Recruiting one is going to need an address. The other one, the Thinkster Pro, Thinkster is going to need a email address that's tied to your GitHub account. So that's just a heads up early on. I will send that on to the proper people in case we don't still have everyone here. But you'll need to private message me that, or you can send me an email. I'm not going to say my email out loud because I don't want it to be on the recording, but I will have that for you. All right. I think we're almost out of time. Oh, I didn't start the timer. Oops. Oh, we're going to end in 1 minute. Let's go. Final stretch.
I love that these graphics look like they were drawn in paint.
Oh, yeah. I can actually take any custom drawing, but I was in a rush.
Oh, did you do this drawing? Or did you?
No, I didn't make it, but I just chose a template. Their templates
Okay.
leave a lot to be desired.
That's really
I think my last one was better with the mountain. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah.
That pretty cool. All right. 20 seconds to go.
Just switch back to the leaderboard.
Okay. Looks like Dark Winter is sitting at the top with 93.34 points. To be honest, I don't know how the points work. I just trust in the scoreboard. I think there's actually a thing that shows you at the end how it did it.
Okay, Dark Winter and Rogelio.
So Dark Winter, you win the cool cup. It's more than a cup, I know. I just don't know the right. That's Alex. Okay, I forgot. That's your awesome screen name. So, Alex, you win the cup, and then Rogelio, you win a Thinkster membership. Although I think you might be the kind of person who probably already writes talks for Thinkster, but you're totally welcome because there's a lot of really great content on there. So that's it for today. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and Michael and I will wave you guys into the distance. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for coming. You guys are awesome.
Okay.